So I started adding the mushrooms to the coffee. And when I did that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I got this like better, like sustainable energy. I drive the car to work and I'm like looking outside. I'm like, damn, things look great. And I'm not here to knock anything that works for people. Okay. I'm just trying to help people that, and myself and people around me that, want alternatives to some of the other things.
And so when I saw this, I was shocked and I was so excited because the more that this type of imagery can get put into society, I feel like that already is raising a certain vibration. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 9 of the Good Trip podcast. I thank you so much for rocking with me these past couple of weeks. This is a 10-part series of conversations with leaders in the fields of business, medicine, entertainment, and more, all sharing their unique experiences and perspectives towards psychedelics. And today's guest is one of the most fun people I've ever had the chance to rock with, Scott Frohman, the founder and CEO of Odyssey Elixirs. You see it right there on the chest with the sacred geometry. So you know that Scott knows what's up. You know that Scott has been to other dimensions. You know that Scott communicates with entities that are not of this world on a regular basis. And this man, you could tell because of how happy he is and the energy that he has and brings into his company, Odyssey Elixir, is just, it's contagious. It's awesome. Just in talking to Scott after this episode, I had more energy. I went out, I ran 20 miles, and I called my mom 3 times in a row. It was incredible. Scott and I had a great conversation about the beginnings of Odyssey Elixirs, what his inspiration was, his journey with drugs and various plant medicines over the years, how he came up in New York in a very wild scene in the late 70s and 80s, and what the differences are today in his approach toward the use of psychedelics and psychedelic medicines, and how mushrooms play such an integral role in his own personal growth, his approach toward leadership and leading a company and growing a business, and so much more. And Odyssey Elixirs is delicious. I got one right here. I drink it every day. It's awesome. Check out odysseyelixir.com to learn more. And right now, we're going to get into this episode. But before we dive in, I want to let everybody know that I got shows coming up in the spring. I'm doing all kinds of spots. I got the Irvine Improv running my full hour there on Thursday, April 13th. Followed soon after by a show in Santa Barbara at Embarcadero Hall in Isla Vista. That's out by UC Santa Barbara, my alma mater. Go Gauchos. That'll be on Saturday, April 22nd. Right before that, I got a show in LA, April 21st. That's a Friday, out in Hollywood. And then in May, I will be in San Francisco on the 6th, High Vibe Festival up in Northern California on the 7th, Pasadena Ice House running my full set on May 12th. And then that's all leading up to my comedy special taping on May 19th and 20th in San Diego, California. The whale's vagina, baby. If you don't get that reference, go watch Anchorman immediately. Everybody can get tickets at brentpella.com/shows. I hope to see y'all out there. And of course, this week's episode is brought to you by Odyssey Elixir, baby. This is 2,500 milligrams of mushrooms, lion's mane and cordyceps, plus organic green tea, caffeine from green tea, 85 milligrams of caffeine. And what I've experienced with Odyssey is that the caffeine from the green tea mixes with the mushrooms so that I get this really clean energy without any of the jitters. There's no anxiety. I have not had anxiety once from drinking these, which is much different than my coffee experience. Plus, it's got Metatron's cube on the front, some sacred geometry right there. So anytime you look at it, you're just automatically connected with the universe, which gives you even more energy. That statement hasn't been FDA approved, but it's Brent Pella approved, which is kind of better, I think. So go check out odysseyelixir.com. They're in stores across the country. You can also order on Amazon and on that website. And man, there's so many benefits here. Nootropics, adaptogens, beta-glucans support immunity. And there's 4 different flavors. My new favorite currently is the dragon fruit lemonade. Odyssey Elixirs. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Doc Parsley's Sleep Remedy. Now, I travel across the country doing stand-up shows at night on all different sides of America. The East Coast, the West Coast, the Middle West, Middle East, all the different places. So my body is always trying to get used to different time zones, which means my rest and my recovery and my sleep is constantly being affected. That's why I bring Doc Parsley's Sleep Remedy with me on the road, because it helps me ease into sleep with its natural ingredients, including L-tryptophan, magnesium, and other key compounds that can help your body ease into a relaxed state and assist in you waking up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the next day. It comes in tea bag form or capsule form, so if you don't like drinking a bunch of water late at night, get the capsules. And cruise over to docparsley.com/Brent to learn more about my favorite sleep supplement and get a discount on your order. And now, please enjoy this uninterrupted trip with Scott Frohman.
Yeah, so you had been using like mushroom supplements for a while previous to launching Odyssey?
The kind of story is like this. I have a friend of mine named Mark Wachter, and he basically built this, like originally this green drink elixir, one of those kinds of things, with the chlorophyll and a million other things. And I love this guy, and he built this mushroom blend. And he says, Scott, he's like, all right, then in addition. So I got the mushroom blend and I was intrigued, and I just started adding it to my coffee in the morning because, like, I love the caffeine in the morning, but I get the wiring and the jittery, and sometimes it upset my gut, but like I didn't want to stop, so I dealt with the ramifications, right? So I started adding the mushrooms to the coffee, and when I did that, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I got this like better, like sustainable energy. I drive the car to work, and I'm like looking outside. I'm like, damn, things look great. Like, this is unbelievable. And then, and that's how it started, And
those were
10 years ago.
Those were not psychedelic mushrooms. Those were just
No.
regular mushrooms. Yeah.
No, that was not psychedelic mushrooms.
Okay.
I mean, I could have that conversation with you too.
Oh, we'll get into it. I mean, that would
right.
just be a hell of a way to start your day, is putting some psilocybin in your coffee and driving to work.
I'd like to eventually one day put psilocybin into Odyssey drinks, just the same.
Oh my God, that would be incredible. With the way we're going, that seems like kind of a next step, with everything that some of these organizations are doing to push things through with the FDA.
And I would be excited to join in on that. I mean, at that point, as things continue to progress as they're going, I mean, we're really developing a national brand, and we're going to have, national distribution and footprint. So like that opens up. I mean, imagine, that it would be fantastic, like we could automatically, and then, people are already comfortable with our product and our brand and, who we are. So, that would be a no-brainer.
That's awesome. So when you tried that first blend of mushroom supplements, did you have a familiarity with different types of mushrooms, or was that kind of your first introduction to?
The only familiarity I had in mushrooms was when I was in college and I was tripping out, what I mean? And
cool.
It was a great time, and I remember some of my favorite times of like doing some great stuff, with that. But and I've done some other things. I remember some Disney characters with a nose that had a little dot of who knows what was in it,
Sure.
Not really. I knew what it was, but and now things have changed. Like I really So yeah, I had no idea about the mushrooms, and I added to the coffee. And then what happened was that when I went to work in the afternoons, living in South Florida, there's a lot Cuban coffee is a big thing down here. Yeah. And and it really fires you up. So I used to give away Cuban coffee to my employees in the afternoon and fire everybody up. And Cuban coffee is a lot of sugar and caffeine and very wiry. And then as I started to use the mushrooms in the afternoon without the coffee, it became, some people are like, what are you doing? And I was like, and that I had an afternoon, slump. I like have the mushrooms, but like I didn't want the caffeine because I didn't want to how it maybe affect me to sleep that night, So I used to just do the mushrooms, and right at the water cooler, I used to mix a little warm water and cold water. I used to mix it up and gulp it down. And then the guys around me, started to do the same thing. And what happened was people like tried to try it out. And I said, guys, listen, you know what? I know I've been old school kind of thing about the coffee and the caffeine, the Cuban coffee, but I want to see you guys live a better existence. I want to see you have a better life. I want to see you have a more sustainable life of energy and, sleep better tonight, wake up better and feeling better tomorrow. And that was the essence, of like where I stopped offering out the Cuban coffee, and because so many people, and we made it a ritual. It's like 25 of us or so around the coffee maker. And if you look at my Instagram, my personal Instagram, I think it was back in 2017. There's a picture of me with my staff with the bottle of the mushroom powder that we used to use. And, I was like putting out a shout out to my buddy, saying, hey, we love your drink. You know what I mean? And, and that's in my Instagram in 2017. And I was drinking that from like a few years before that. So like, it was a very real thing for me. And then, everybody liked it so much, they all felt the effects. And that's what really gave me the idea that, when I thought, what do I want to do forward in my life? I said, I want to do something with the mushrooms.
That's awesome. And do you remember what type of mushrooms you were rocking with back then?
Yeah, it was a really blend of everything. It was reishi and turkey tail and shiitake, and it was a lot of immunity type, mushroom, but it also had the cordyceps, and it had the lion's mane. So, it was really just a well-rounded blend. And then, when we first started this, funny enough, I launched coffee. That was the initial boost of doing this, because like I related to the coffee, and I was like, because originally I wanted to do something with the mushrooms, but I didn't want to do a tincture. You know what I mean? I felt like, dribbles down your shirt.
Yeah.
I wanted to do something that people had a good experience with. Right. So I thought to myself, well, I like coffee. Everyone has the packets, you know what I mean, at that time. There's no really finished product to drink, in a can. So I said, oh, I'm going to do that, so that's how it kind of came about. And I made the coffees, and then there was a little delay during the COVID days. And I was like, oh, let me play around making some teas, and I made some teas. And I met a great mushroom manufacturer where these guys like decades in the business from the dad, and now the sons are running the business. And I really been able to kind of, develop a great relationship. And they kind of like really were like, we want to help you to make this thing great. Because I went into them, I said, what's the highest milligram strengths we can go? I want to go the highest milligram strength. But everybody else goes to them and says, what's the minimum amount that we need to put in so people get an effect so we don't have to spend so much money? And I was like, they thought I was out of my mind, because I was like, I don't care about the money. I just want to have the greatest product in the world.
Yeah.
And I just want to go and I want people to feel it. I want them to get the effect that I was familiar with. You know what I mean? And, we made one coffee with more lion's mane called Focus. And we made another coffee called Energy that we used more cordyceps. And what happened was that one day I was like, take the one can with the other can, and I put it both in a glass together, and I mixed it up, and I drank it down. I was like feeling great. I was like,
you're like Bradley
sick.
Cooper and Limitless, just doing algebra in your head and calculus and
not even kidding.
Languages. Yeah, that's
like
incredible.
That, I felt like, wow. I'm like, this is amazing. And we all started doing it here in the office, and we're like, wow. And I said, maybe we can make a sparkling out of this and make a new age energy drink. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, like everything, nothing's really been innovative since Red Bull with caffeine and taurine. You know what I mean? Maybe we could develop a new age energy that's really for brain function, for focus, clarity, for consciousness, to feel more present, mood boosting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Not wiry, and that's what happened. And I said, maybe we can make a sparkling. So I've got mushroom manufacturer guys. Hey guys, what's happening? I'm like, what's the highest milligram strength you guys have ever really messed with? You know what I mean? Because I like put these two together, and it actually was really good. And they were like, well, actually, we've done some testing, and that's what came about. And we wound up taking this extract, because they were developing to extract out the fiber and being left with this high potency extract. And that's why we're able to get to emulsify within the drink and not muddy up the drink, because, we're getting rid of all that fiber. And then, so the ratios are like 8-to-1 ratio from when you take the mushrooms, you dry them, and then most companies, they just grind them up, and then they put it into a capsule, or they put it into a packet, and they say, add this to your coffee. What we do is we take all that ground powder, and then we extract out the fiber, and we left with this like concentrate. And the concentrate is way more powerful, and that's what we're able to use in our drink. And then we use that, and then, we came up with the milligram strength, so it makes sense. And then we did that, and we tried the sparkling. So I didn't think I could make the sparkling, honestly. I thought I did be a little muddied up, and you can't have a muddied up sparkling drink because it'll
No,
look
that would
weird.
be awful. Yeah, and I love the sparkling. I'm hammering through my dragon fruit lemonade right now. But okay, so this is
It matches your what do you
it
call it,
does.
your
That's
picture
why
back
I
there.
set up the lights like that. Yeah, because I like to be a little fancy. So this is where you are now, and it's an incredible space. I love the passion that you have for what you do and the vision that you had for this brand. And I'm very curious on what your journey was to get there, both professionally and personally. So, where are you from, first and foremost? Are you
I
from
grew up
out in
in
Florida?
Brooklyn. I grew up in
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Hmm.
Yeah. And in high school and
You know,
college,
my parents told me always, the biggest mistake you made in life is you weren't born to a rich family. No, you know, you're gonna have
You'll
to
be
find a way
both,
to
dude.
make it yourself.
Yeah. So
And yeah, good. Sorry.
did you were you business minded in high school and college? Did you
When
have like a
I-
career plan or?
Look, I grew up in Brooklyn, and you know what? And truth is, if I wanted things, I had to go out and earn it and find ways to get the money for it. Okay, and I, at a young age, I was swinging fireworks. I was fixing bikes and flipping them and turning them and selling them again. I doing, and I got older. I started my own car wash business and went door to door and put flyers in people's mailboxes. Let me wash your car. You know what I mean? And it was more, in college, I made T-shirts and I went door to door, dorm to dorm. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, it was going so good. Everybody like I said, hey, can I sell you T-shirts for you? And I was like, sure, I'll give you $1 a T-shirt. Next thing you know, they got we got beer, bar money, and it was great. And then I started flea market business during the summer college times, and I used to go to the flea market and swing the T-shirts and the shorts and stuff. So I was always kind of like, and I've been able to find things, early, and that were trending or before the trend started, and kind of felt it and was willing to pioneer in things, early days. And I feel like I got into this at the right time. I think that this is getting very mainstream very quickly. Something that I picked up on many years ago, but I was caught up in my last business. I couldn't get out, and I really didn't have the bandwidth to kind of get into this. So but yeah, I think that I've been fortunate to see move trends, and not be afraid to dive in, and just kind of be fearless about it and say, okay, and then listen to my gut, you know what I mean? And and just kind of like find, and then I get in, and funny enough, then I look back and I'm like I am now, I'm like, what did I decide to do again? Like, I'm in the beverage business, and I'm like, oh, like, wow. And now I'm in really deep, you know what I mean? We're in like
You're in
thousands
it.
of stores,
Yep.
I mean, and it's great. So like, I'm willing to dive into the water, and you know what, and I'm going to swim. But look, hey, if I don't feel like if it feels right, I'm going to make separate. Look, we started with coffees and teas. You know what? The velocity on the sparkling was way through the roof of the coffees and the teas. And there's a great business model to be made in the coffees, especially, and I could have figured out my way probably with the teas too. But I said, you know what? I'm going to nix it. You know what? I love the coffees. It was, it's so funny how you go down a path thinking that that's what path is going to be. And the next thing here we are. And now we're really focused more as as an energy drink that is really, like I said, this whole new kind of thinking of what an energy drink. And I feel like we're doing really good by people, because there's a lot of people with anxieties, a lot of people that are labeled, which I don't like, about ADHD, and they're put on Adderall and Prozac or whatever. And like, I like, all right, what am I, ADHD too? Okay, you want to label me? So I don't know. And I get it. And for some people, it's very hard for them to get out of bed. It's very hard for them to get overwhelmed and have their moments. And I do too, by the way. I have a life coach. I'm constantly working on myself. But like, it's taken a lot, you know what I mean? And there are things that set me off, and I have to like regroup, and I meditate, and I'm like, okay, let's get back fucking, And, but I felt like I wanted to do something with purpose with this drink, because I felt like this drink could really help people that, to help them to be, more, in alignment.
Yeah.
And, and have this, functionally way better life. And, and that this could be a great alternative to some alcohol, but you're having a great night and you feel this kind of like lift, and you feel like this fun and having fun, and you're enjoying your, and that this is your journey this is all your special times. You know what I'm saying? And
Mhm.
it's nice to see people get as much out of it as they possibly can. And I feel that there hasn't been a drink that could help people get off a lot of these caffeine drinks. And that caffeine, the high caffeine energy drinks, people are like, when you get addicted to it, and it's hard to get off it because like you get on it, you feel like you can't function that day without it. You get headaches. You gotta feel like you gotta get to work. You gotta make it happen. You gotta like do all the things you gotta do, and you want to be keep up with everybody else. So you kind of like you do it, but it's long term, not maybe an ideal long term existence. And unfortunately, I was saying the
Yeah.
truth always comes out. So I was like, I felt like, like I really wanted to do something that, really help people a more natural way and use the power of these mushrooms to, but doing it in a fun factor and flavorful factor and a more like, like cool factor and not like, and just bring it to make it like awesome. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
people would be
Yeah.
like, yeah, this is what I drink. You know what I mean? Like, this is great. You know what I mean? Like in a good
I
way.
think it's so amazing what you prioritize throughout this whole um throughout the growth of the company. You're prioritizing mindfulness, awareness, health, and really the positive effect on what the ingredients have on your body, which is incredible. And I'm curious what other practices helped you kind of become so mindful. I mean, early on, were there any types of substances? Were there any practices that you started to get familiar with in your 20s or coming out of college that kind of set you on this track that led to where you are, and what your perspective is toward, humanity and how a product can impact people in such a way?
You know, um, it's funny. I remember something that my mom once said to me a long time ago, and I remember I was telling her like something like, "Well, when I get that, it's gonna be great." Blah blah blah. My mom had just got this new BMW, and she was like, um, and she said to me, she says she wasn't in a good mood. And my mom's always in a good mood. My mom's like freaking like the eternal optimist. And she says, let me tell you something. She goes, you better learn the lesson now that, if you think once you have those things that that's when you're going to be happy, you're going to be rudely mistaken, because you're going to have bad days when you have that too at times. Okay. It could happen. All right. And you got to be happy in the moment, and that's the journey. You know what I mean? And you got to enjoy the ride. And I've learned that if you enjoy the ride along the way, that when you have these moments that, of some of these dreams and aspirations that come about, you already in sync of being happy, you're in sync of enjoyment. And then you have that in special moments that those times come about. You want to get married, you want to build a business, you want to have your own business, whatever it may be, but it's important to along the way, so I always was like focused on making sure that, I was in check of enjoying my life as it was progressing, regardless of what it looked like. And then, because I know that, or else you may get to what you think you're going to get to, it's going to make you happy. But if you weren't happy along the way, then chances are you're not going to be happy then either. And then it's like being on a treadmill, and it just goes faster and faster, because
Hmm.
now you got to go to the next thing. And then you're going to be like, well, when that happens, well, then I'll really be happy. You know what I mean? And then like you just like you kill yourself trying to go until you crash, and you're like, I think I figured out that I gotta kind of look at this a little differently. So,
Hmm.
I think that I just tried to kind of live a balanced world of life. You know what I mean? And I've smoked my weed, and I've drank my drinks, and I still like my drinks, and and I found psilocybin in the last few years. Honestly, it wasn't a big thing for me before that. It was more of like what I used it just to go for a great trip back in the day, in college and stuff like that, and a little bit after college. But going to Pink Floyd concert or something, just some of
Oh,
the other
that's
times,
got to be fun.
laser light shows, in New
Yeah.
York City and stuff like that. Yeah, lots of fun. I love it. I'd
Was
like to go one right now.
psilocybin? Yeah, was psilocybin the substance of choice for you back in your college days and a little bit after?
Nah, I think it was a thing that was a thing from here or there, but it wasn't like something that was like a controlled thing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It was
yeah.
like we weren't going for how I've used it now. You know what I mean? Now I find that with a few days on and a few days off. And, I've tried different things, the 1 day on, 1 day off and stuff like that, that I have found that it has, really put me in a elevated, cool state and being creative and, how I view myself and, more about like, okay, if I'm not right, then things aren't right. So I have to just take a break and get right. You know what I mean? And I think it's where without it, I would just be like, just keep kind of going a bit. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And now I just think I'm willing to look at things a little bit, different more, and be like, okay, where's the gunk that still needs to be flushed out,
Yeah. Yeah.
And but back in the college days, I think that things back in my college days, it was a little bit more about like stuff that would like really fire you up, you know what I mean? And give
Oh,
you
the streets of New York? Yeah. I bet.
that extra boost, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
because look, I graduated college in 1989. We're talking about like mid 80s, late 80s.
Oh, dude. The streets were covered in white powder.
Shit was fire, dude. You know
yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
wild. It was raining white pills back then.
Fuck yeah,
Good
man.
God.
It was, oh yeah, baby. I mean, out in the clubs and out in the nightlife, and it was so like there. It was like it was just like almost like okay, like it was okay. It was like bathrooms and right there at the tables at the with just hanging out and in
Just
an
out in the
environment
open.
like
Yeah.
looking the other way. Yeah, baby, fucking feeling good, man. Let's go, dude. Like what? And that's long gone in my life, to be honest. I really has.
Yeah.
I've actually decided that there are things in my life that I have two beautiful children. I have a beautiful wife, and I feel like I've gotten away with what I've gotten away with, and I'm grateful. And I'm going to take my winnings and run.
Oh,
and
of course.
now,
It's also not
and now things are very
sustainable.
different. I don't mess with what I've got. Like I
Totally.
protect what I have.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
and I think that and maybe that's why I look at the caffeine and I have this kind of vengeance towards it a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, and don't get me wrong. I don't listen. I boost up on the caffeine a little bit too sometimes. All right, I get it. You know what I mean? Sometimes I'm like, fuck, but like. I don't think it's cool to have it like as a, a consistent ongoing existence. And for some people it works and they're used to it and they're comfortable with it. I'm not here to knock anything that works for people. Okay. I'm just trying to help people that, and myself and people around me that, want alternatives to some of the other things, or not alternatives, just want to have things that are just going to, fit within their world and what works best in their lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And so you said you started dabbling with microdosing psilocybin within the past couple of years, yeah?
Yeah. Yep.
And what were some of the moments that kind of led you to start in this new direction with microdosing? Was there anybody in your life? Was it more of just a curiosity of how you could be better individually?
I think I just, had some moments of blockage of areas that things I wanted to kind of break through. You know what I mean? I do believe that there is power in your words. I believe that if you say something, and a friend of mine yesterday says to me, God, you look great. You're fit. You look so good. Your energy's so great. And when we left lunch, he says to me, and, he didn't look so great. It's like, but he's a great guy. I love him. And he says to me, he says, I love beer, and that's why it's hard for me, to ever get like you. And I looked at him and I said, Mike, I said, I don't really see you live far away, lives in North Carolina. I said, I don't see you much. So I'm just going to tell you that words have power. And if you say that you like the beer, then that's what it's going to pull you to liking the beer. If you say that you like your life, if you say that you love your wife, if you say you love your children, and if you say that you want to live the healthiest, most exorbitant, amazing life for as long as you possibly can, I said, you're not going to say you like the beer. You're going to say, I like to eat some neutrally dense foods. I like to eat other things. I like to drink other things because they're going to help support my journey for the things that I love that are really important to me. So I don't know where I just went with that, but you know what I'm saying? But
that's intention. You're talking about intention pretty much. The more authentic you put
yeah. So
intention.
right. And we're talking about the psilocybin. So so that's,
Yeah.
so I felt like, you know what, I want to try and have like more of a consistent, type, sometimes all of a sudden you get angry about something or somebody triggers you, you know what I mean? And you're disappointed with what they did, you know what I mean? And working so hard and somebody kind of like, and I just wanted to have this better existence. And I felt like if I had the psilocybin, that it would help to relax my mind and relax me in a way that I could have a better view where I wouldn't be triggered by these situations that could kind of come about. And I think I've come a very, very long way, and I still have work to be done, but I think that's really helped me a lot, because I think that it helps to change the tracks that I was on, because this person would do this in this kind of environment and that would trigger me here, and it was like almost like a that's what it was, and now I feel like with the mushrooms, and I see it in the functional mushrooms too, that I find that I could be like, oh, I'm not going to get triggered from that anymore. Like
Right.
I'm on a
Right.
different trajectory, I'm on a different track. I'm looking for what's really going to give me feeling good and what makes me give energy out to people around me, rather than taking energy and wearing myself down or wearing other people down around me. So I think that that's where I came from on it, was that I wanted to get through some through areas, and I felt like as much as I was accomplishing on my own, that maybe with the psilocybin and microdosing, that I could kind of like enhance the speed and and get to places where I really wanted to be.
That's awesome. And so previous to starting to microdose psilocybin, were there any other psychedelic substances that you dabbled with in your adult life, in your adult like working career life, or had you kind of written off all substances after you swam through mountains of white powder in college?
Yeah, I think that there was a few, exactly. There was a few bags of mushrooms, at different times, and that happened infrequently along the way. And then I think it just kind of like, really kind of dissipated altogether. I didn't know people who had them or where to get them, and it just, I think that's what happened. I was living in New York City, we're out in the clubs, and I think it was just a different era and a different time and a different level of consciousness, you know what I mean, than what we're striving for today.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anyone growing up that was kind of into that world, into that psychedelic space or the conscious space, the space of awareness and I call them new age hippies because those are all my friends and that's me too.
Yeah.
We dress up in our robes and we go hang out in the desert at music festivals every summer. But did you have anybody like that either growing up or in your college days that was kind of a little bit more in that conscious realm and interacting with those substances in more of an aware, conscious way rather than maybe just swallowing them down and listening to music?
I think that there were, relatives of mine, aunts, uncles that, grew up in the 70s, that, and like, even late 60s and early 70s and mid 70s, and, that I had very close relationships with. And although I don't know, what they did back then, I could only imagine. And, so I just have to believe that there was an energy about the way they showed up and the way they went about their lives, and the kind of, you know, Grateful Dead days, and Woodstock days, and the good days of the great music, and that they were always so about like, lit them up when they think about like, Jim Morrison and Hendrix and
Yeah.
like so many amazing artists, and then I think that there was a thing there with them about that, and I think some of that really rubbed off on me. I think that my world really started more in the 80s, and it was 80s with was the next era, and I think those 80s era was a little different than the early 70s, and late 60s era. That was like kind of like more like Flower Children kind of vibe and stuff like
Totally.
that. And I think
Yeah.
late 70s into the 80s, it became Studio 54, and it was a party.
That's aggressive. Yeah.
And I was
Those
growing
were-
up in Brooklyn, man. It was Brooklyn. It was roller skating rinks. It was like,
Yeah.
Saturday Night Fever, man. Like it was fucking.
That's
and
boogie
and
nights,
growing up in
dude.
Brooklyn, dude, you're 12 years old. You're 10 years old. You got your own gig, bro. Look, I grew up. My mom went to work. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. Okay, legit. Okay, we made the kitchen into an extra bedroom where my mom slept. Okay, and my sister and I slept in the same room, and we had one little tiny bathroom. All right, so and I just remember my mom with her friends coming over, and them playing the music, and they're hanging out. My mom was a single mom, going out to Studio 54. God knows what she was up to. You know what I mean? But I don't know, I feel like, those were time. And I used to get out of school, and there was nobody there. My
Yeah.
sister went to a kid's house, and, my mom and the other mom, spent money for a babysitter to watch these other kids while the moms had to work, because everybody had to go jump on trains to New York City. Is to meet my mom at the train station to help her carry the bundles of food back home in the cold weather and shit, So I was on my own. So I was on my own at a very young age. I was riding my bike to Coney Island and hanging out. So I don't know, I was on a tear, you know what I mean? And thank God I managed myself to kind of, keep it in line. But I got fire, man. I got a lot of fire. I got to control that fire, because that's my probably one of my bigger issues. I just go, you get me going, man. I'm ready to roll. You know
That's
what I
great,
mean?
dude. That's great for business. But I
yes,
think,
but I have to. It's important for me to kind of not overexert myself and exhaust
yeah.
myself.
And
So
you
anyway,
you have to stay kind of self-aware to not allow any of that to become toxic, because there's probably a pretty
right.
fine line between being fired up and ready to go and turning into maybe an overly controlling, obsessive kind of leader.
Or what happens is, it's it comes at what cost, that you wind up kind of exerting yourself and going so far, and and then what happens is that how much energy is left, for other things that you want to do.
Mhm.
How hard is it to come back from that? I like to cycle a bike ride. I like, and a lot of times we go cycling, and and everyone's drafting. You see these big cycle groups, there's a million different guys, and they're all, and the guy who's in the front, he's the guy who's into the wind, and everybody else is drafting behind. And it's a lot easier to draft behind, especially the further back you go. So the key is, when you're in the front, if you just kind of overexert yourself doing that pull, what happens is when you come out and come back, and the next guy goes, and you're kind of going to the back of the line to get back in, you might not be able to hold that wheel, because that ride's going so fast, and you're so tired from being up there in the front and doing it for so long, that when you get to that back wheel and keeping that same speed, you just might not have enough juice. You might not have enough in the tank, and then you fall off the ride. So I look at that in life. I would say, okay, look, you know what? My wife needs me to pick up both kids today at school and go get them. My wife has something to do down in Miami. So I gonna come from this, and I got to pace myself. I know when my kids get in the car, I want to be able to be like, hey guys, what's going on? How's school? What's going on? I want to be there too. You know what I mean? So you have to, when you're an achiever, you know what I mean, and you're able to press the gas, you just have to know, I don't want to crash into the wall, and I don't want to wipe myself out that I got to go take a nap for the next hour just so I can regroup myself to come back to reality and back to a better place. It's fun
That's awesome.
Conversation hanging out with you, by the way.
Yeah, it's great.
I didn't know
dude.
where it was really going, or honestly jumping into this when we started.
The thing is, we got nowhere to go. We just have a place to be, and that place is right here. You know what I mean? So you are a father. You're raising 2 beautiful kids, as you said, and I'm curious what your perspective is toward the culture of the drug culture today is so much different than it was in the 80s. There seems to be this incredible psychedelic renaissance happening right now, where organizations like MAPS and VETS are helping to push different substances through the process with the FDA, and the stigmatization of different substances is being reduced and reduced and reduced, and there's just more educational material out there to help people connect with the reality of what some of these medicines can be used for. So I'm curious how you see your kids entering the world and grow. How old are your kids, by the way?
I have almost 8-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Okay, cool. So when the time comes, like what's your perspective going to be, and what's that conversation going to be like with them, if there is one, about psychedelics and drugs, and how different do you think that'll be from your own experience growing up?
I think it's going to be very different. And the different parts that I see about it is that I think the younger generations now are just a bit more educated, and I think their thinking and their brains are developing pretty fast. And there's a lot of, they're getting thrown a lot of information. And I think when I grew up in a much more simple type of environment. There wasn't cell phones. People got into the car, go to work or come home, and that was the downtime. You know what I mean? You get in the car. Basically it was AM or FM. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what it was. And and it wasn't a cell phone. So like now, there's just, they're learning so much so fast. So I think what's going on is that even you see with the Gen Zs, they're smarter than the generations from before. I think the millennials are also smarter than the generations from before.
Thank you.
Because you're welcome very much. And and I think that they think about how this is going to serve me. What's the effects I'm going to get from this? So I think that it's a, and I really like to see a world start to transform its way away from the Adderalls and so many other substances. And if it does help people and it's the right thing, I'm not against that, by the way. Okay, listen, if I get really sick, I take an antibiotic. I prefer not to. If I don't have to, I try not to. But if I get to the point where like I can't get myself better without it, I'm going to take it. If I felt like I couldn't get myself better, spiritually, or emotionally, and Adderall was better for me to take so I could live a better existence life, I would take my Adderall. And I don't, I'm not saying anything, I think that it has a place. But I think that natural remedies has a way better place. And I think that, it wasn't available, or it wasn't as known that, these other types. So I think people need to be able to, test different things. And I think people are going to be able to the new generations are going to make better decisions on what seems to be best for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to tell my kids to embrace what seems to be best for them. If you feel like you want to have a drink from time to time, or drinks more than time to time, and that seems to be make you feel like you're enjoying your life and that has a sustainable existence for you, then I'm not against alcohol. Although, I personally have found that alcohol is, I'm not as excited about alcohol, as much as I used to be. I'm more excited about other things. I'm more excited about, the feelings of how I feel consciously from psilocybin and from, other types of things. So like, I just think that the world's, and I don't think that, government should be telling us like what's best. And, these, 60, 70, 80-year-old, people in government, they're like, they got their own agendas. And,
Yeah.
And I really feel that, people should have the power of choice. So
Yeah.
I'm excited, for my children. And I think that, I think that what we're seeing now is that there's a new level of consciousness. And that's why meditation and yoga and Pilates and retreats and psilocybin and other kinds of things are becoming so much, are helping people. And I think that I actually think that there's been so much information overload in the Gen Zs and the millennials a bit, because all this new phone systems and internet and TikToks and Instagrams and Facebooks is like, it happened. It's really the beginning of all this happening in like the last 20 years, let's say. So like, it's really the beginning of that. I think the generations moving forward will have a better relationship with all of that.
Mhm.
The generations before, it became a lot of overwhelming. It was like, it was so much and it was so new. And I think that's what led to a lot of anxiety. I think that's what led to a lot of ADHD. I think that's what led to a lot of, other things. So I
It was
think that
overwhelming.
it was overwhelming. I think
Yeah.
it was just, so much so quick. And I think that the next generations, quite honestly, from the Gen Zs and the millennials now, as they having their kids are almost born with a better existence for that. They grew up more at the beginning with that, and they maybe, I don't know. I think this would be a better relationship. Like I see my kids, I'm like, all right, look, I think you've had enough, and I think you should put it down. And my daughter's like, I think you're right. Thanks for bringing that up. And I
Wow.
see her put it down on her own. I see her put it down on her own. She goes, oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, what?
Wow.
Yeah. So you put it down. She goes, I think I had enough. I don't need so
Wow.
much of that.
That's
Not
great.
it's
That's so
not
mature.
serving me. It's not
Right.
serving me. Like what?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
serving you? That's great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we're not in a restaurant, But anyway, you get it. So like I think it's all, I'm excited about the future times. I really am. I think it's a special time. I think there's gonna be happier times. I think that, people are just like, they're saying, look, if I don't like what's going on in my life and I'm not happy with my life, people I think are more willing to step up than stick it around in bad situations. You see it at work. How many people like, I'm not gonna do that job. No, I'm
Yeah.
not doing that job. No, you know what? I'm not enjoying that. I don't care about the money. You can keep your fucking money. I'm moving on. I'm going to do something else. And you see a lot of that. And I respect people that, don't just stand for staying in situations and are willing to take that risk to say that there's better for me out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't really think of that before. This my sister is 10 years younger than me. So she is right smack in the middle of this Gen Z era. But it is interesting to think about the generation after her, because yeah, she was raised with social media, but it was still like pretty overwhelming because it really started to pop when she was like a tween, like in that tween age. And so now the next generation that's coming up behind her is coming up with social media already in the world, already everywhere you go. You can't miss it. You can't miss the pressures from it or anything else. But at the same time, like you just said, this sense of conscious rise, this new consciousness that's rising and encouraging people to do things that are mindful, add mindful practices to their lives, yoga, Pilates, things like that, is kind of balancing it out in a way that I didn't have growing up and in a way that my sister didn't have growing up. So yeah, that is interesting. The next generation is really going to step into a different space with all of those things.
I have a 3-year-old. She does yoga.
She does yoga.
She's taught yoga. They
That's
teach
incredible.
yoga. They teach yoga.
That's amazing. They should teach yoga at school.
She's showing me. She goes, downward dog.
Ah!
Leg out to over here like that, and I'm like, what? I'm like, wife, you see that? At least look at that. You know what I mean?
That's so much more useful than y equals mx plus b.
My older daughter, they teach her meditation. They sit in a group, in a round group. They all sit, and they sit in the inside. Go, now we're just gonna meditate. We're gonna sit. And my daughter sees me meditating. Like, how often, like she already knows, like, we have a relationship to speak to that. Like on Saturday mornings, I'll like, she'll see me and I'm like, okay, I'm like, I'm going to go meditate. Do you want me to make you breakfast first, and then, or, should I make you breakfast after I meditate? It's like, that's a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like that didn't take place 20 years ago. Like,
right.
You look at somebody like they're weird. Like, are you okay? You gonna what?
You're gonna what?
Are you gonna like what do you mean? Right? Seriously,
you know
what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it's like my daughter's like, oh no, you know what? No, I'll wait today. I'll wait till you're done. She knows I'm gonna meditate for a half hour and I'll be back around. You know what I mean? She's like, cool, I'm chilling out. Or she might be like, I'm really hungry. Would you make me breakfast now? I'm like, sure, I'll make you breakfast now. I'll go meditate. And she'll be quiet knowing that, I'm in the other room and she'll keep it cool. You know what I mean? So like, and or so she'll come in, she'll wake up and I'll be meditating and she'll come in and she'll see me and I got my special spot room where I do it, and she'll come down there knowing like there's dad around, I know where he is, and she goes in there and she sees me and she'll just sit quietly on the couch and I know she's
Aw,
there, and it's
yeah.
all cool. And I love it. I feel it's good energy that's going on inside my, my moment. And, then I'll wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm like, hey, good to see you. How you doing? It's all good. But like, yeah,
And she's learning
and
in the
look what she's
moment.
growing up with,
Yeah, yeah. She gets to really integrate that experience into her own just sensibilities. And then she's
and
going to take that as she gets older.
right. And that's how I think that she's going to realize, oh, I've been on the phone too much. You know what?
Hmm.
I'm going to put this down. You know what I mean? She'll feel things in advance of it becoming where it's gone too far. And now she's kind of getting in a frantic kind of place,
Hmm.
potentially. I hope so anyway. And that's what we're going for. So, yeah. So, I think it's a cool times, man. I really do. And I love what I do because I love being able to connect with the younger generations. I mean, I think we're making impact on some of the, older generations. And there are, funny enough, like a lot of older people that are like, oh, my brain function's not the same. And and I heard that, the mushrooms can be good for me. So I'm drinking. I can't tell you how many elderly people drink. I drink weirdly enough. Like I did not
Really?
expect that. Can you believe?
That's
Like, because
awesome.
they get too wired on the other stuff or the coffee and other things, and they're like, it's amazing to me. But I think I love supporting the younger Gen Zs and and the millennials, and about like giving them like these kinds of better options. Like I've been
Hmm.
fortunate to have had the opportunities that I found ways to open up into my life. And it's funny because like when I first came to saying I want to do this, like I can't tell you how many people like, all right, you're gonna do what? Like, are you serious? Like, no. I remember when I told my wife I wanted to do CBD back in the day, and that didn't resonate with me like this, like the CBD had opportunities in that, and I kind of like, it resonated with me a bit, but not like this, and how many people are like, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to, I have a can that says Odyssey Mushroom Elixir. I mean, no one's, like to say
Wild.
mushroom, like people are like, are you for real?
Yeah.
You're gonna put down like mushroom? Like who's gonna drink that? You know what I mean? And I'm like,
Apparently,
I'm not
millions
calling
of
it
people.
adaptogens. I'm not calling it
Right.
adaptogens because, like, adaptogens, like, people, you think that everybody knows what adaptogen is? They don't. They don't know. But mushrooms, like, let's not pussyfoot around. Let's just
Yeah.
call it for what it is. The freaking mushrooms and shit, man.
It's mushroom, and then you went one step further into the eye of the universe, and you put some sacred geometry on the front, which is wild. I got to tell you, and this is no joke, I was already drinking these prior to like making that post and talking to Mark about it. I had maybe tried my first one a little over a year ago somewhere. Somebody had them in a fridge. One of my friends that wears beads and has a man bun and goes by the name Rainforest Moon or whatever. And so I tried one and I was in love right away, but I was also shocked at the design because as a wannabe hippie myself, I love sacred geometry. At my house, I got the flower of life on like every wall in every room. And so when I saw this, I was shocked and I was so excited because the more that this type of imagery can get put into society, I feel like that already is raising a certain vibration. As far out as that might sound, that's truly what I believe. And I'm curious, what was the inspiration for putting this on the can? Was it
Oh,
that? Was it? Are you into the sacred G? Did you have a crazy trip once? And you
so that's a great story, actually. So,
okay, cool.
I'll tell you, and I won't get too long. So, I always resonated with the power of the universe. Okay. Like it's always been my thing. You know what I mean? What you put out is what you get back. You know what I mean? Like I really do believe in the in manifesting what you want to bring in your life. And I'm not saying everything's always perfect and stuff. And I've had my hardships and challenges different times, unfortunately. You know what I'm saying? So like, but by and large, I really do believe if we focus on and we use that there is an energy that's out there. I've seen miraculous things happen in my life. I've just and I see it. I've seen these miracle type things happen a lot.
Hmm.
And I think it's so I've always been into the sacred geometries and paying attention to different ones. And when we first started, by the way, we had multiple sacred geometries. A matter of fact, there was 8 SKUs to start. There was 3 coffees and 3 teas, and each one had its own sacred geometry.
Oh, wow.
And then when I came up with the sparkling, I was going. I didn't know what to do, and I think at first I was actually working with multiple sacred geometries, and I don't know what I was going to do. I was going to duplicate a little bit of what I had going on with the coffees and teas, and then and this is the craziest story. So I'm in my house. And I wake up in the morning at like 5 a.m. like I normally do, and I go downstairs, and there's a relative of mine named Cheston that's sitting that's in my that's at my dining room table because he slept over that night because my mother-in-law was worried she had COVID, and instead of him sleeping there, he slept at my house, which we're not really tight. We don't really even know each other that well, but he happened to be, hey, can I stay at your house? So I was like, my wife and I, of course you could stay at our house. You stay at our house. So he stayed at our house. He lives in LA, and here we're in Florida. So I see him, and I'm like, and I was like shocked because I forgot he was even staying there, and I said, "Oh, hey, good to see you." And he's like reading these books, these big books. It's on my dining room table, whatever. So, I go to get my cup of coffee, and you want a cup of coffee, and then somehow I'm like, I have a trainer. And the trainer, I mean, like we religiously work out these days, and we do it over Zoom, and he's like, I can't believe this guy. I feel terrible, but I completely screwed up my time with you. Like, how, dude, what do you mean? We did this for years already. Like, what? I'm like, all right. So then I'm like, hey, tell him, Cheston, you know what? I got a little extra time drinking my coffee with him inside. I'm like, I got to go work out. I'm like, I'll see you in a little bit. You know what I mean? And I said, Cheston, I said, you know what? I'm going to go to work. You're going to do your thing. You're going to leave here at the end of the day because he wasn't coming back. And I'm like, quite honestly, you got here late last night. I never get a chance to talk to you. So, hey, you know what? Fuck working out. You know what? I'd rather spend the time hanging out with you. If you like to hang out with me, good, good. So what's going on? See, I said, wait, why don't we go outside for a walk? We're drinking the coffee, and get some fresh air. He goes, great, let's do it. So we go outside and we go for a walk with our coffees, and we're hanging out and moving around. It's very nice out, beautiful time in the morning. And he says to me, so tell me about this drink you're doing, So I tell him about the drink. And I say, yeah, we're using the sacred geometries and da-da-da-da. And I'm like, and he says to me, so which ones you working with? I said, I'm thinking, about doing different ones on the sparkling too. And one of them is Metatron, because the Metatron really kind of like is about like incorporates like all the sacred geometries, and it's really about, protection and energy and, just it felt like it was like about like, it was so powerful. And I felt like I really wanted it, that, so I was like, I think I'm going to use that. And I'm telling him about the other ones. And he says to me, he says, dude, he goes, you got to come inside. He takes me inside. All the books that he's reading, he's doing a very deep, this guy's very deep. And this is like a very cool, like kind of guy. He's doing a very, very deep study about Metatron Cube.
Wow.
He's been doing deep study on Metatron Cube for about 1.5 years.
Whoa.
Yeah. About 1.5 years. He is reading about, like, it was like unbelievable. He's studying with a person that's like known as like the person of persons about Metatron Cube that unfortunately had just passed away. And he was taking it upon himself to finish his own studies and was doing this deep dive. And then all of a sudden I said, I got news for you. I said, I'm worried. I'm done. I'm doing the Metatron Cube.
That's it.
This drink is going to have the Metatron Cube on every single one. I said, I'm just doing Metatron Cube. I said, this is way too coincidental, and I am listening to what is being, is coming about here, because I'm feeling this. I'm feeling it.
Totally.
And that is how I decided. And fortunately enough, I'm very fortunate. I'm very grateful that I could go and say, you know what? I'm going to make, because people are like, you can't do this or something like that. I'm like, not only can I'm going to. And I was fortunate enough and grateful that I have the ability in life to be able to do these things and do this. And I done that, and I put it on the can, and I said, go to print with that.
Go to print. Go to
People
print
are like,
it.
dude, like, good.
That's awesome, dude. And that's what happens when you keep your mind open and you hold space and allow the universe to tap in, you know?
Could have
I talked
easily gone to go work out and missed that, and I had no idea he did that. He was studying for that. No idea. Could have taken a whole completely different turn, because we had one other product that had the Metatron cube on it, a tea. So I was actually thinking about maybe doing something different. I wasn't sure what to do, because, like, you know what I mean. But I'm really, really helpful, and it feels really super correct to me. And I never look back from that, even for a minute. Now I'm going to make T-shirts. I'm going to make Metatron Cube T-shirts. I said, you know what? People are like, oh, it says Odyssey. I'm like, I don't need everybody walking around like a billboard. My staff is like, dude, it's got to be the name of our company. If you just put a Metatron Cube on, how are they going to know? I'm like, don't worry.
They will.
It will be okay.
Even if they don't, you're radiating that energy from the design, and that is going to come back to you full circle, That's super cool, man. And then you got the mushrooms on the can too. What are these? Turkey tail? No.
Oh,
is this a certain type of mushroom on the can? Or is that
that's
more
really
of a cool
funny.
design?
Actually, it was just the design, and that's another great funny ass story how that came about. But anyway, but I actually, that's really funny. I just liked the design, and that's what I went with. I haven't even really looked into it.
That's awesome. I mean, it looks like either oyster mushrooms or turkey tail. I cook with mushrooms all the time. So, but it's, I mean, the can itself is a trip.
Mushroom.
The can is a trip.
The can's a trip.
The can is a whole trip. That's amazing, bro. So as we move to wrap this up, I would love to know what your vision is for the future. We joked at the very beginning of this about putting some psilocybin in some cans, but that doesn't seem like it's that far.
That's not a joke. That's not a joke. That's for real. That's for real. Look. Right now is this. Look, I have to do a business that makes sense, and that could, make money and do business and have revenue, and you know what I mean. And unfortunately, I'm not really like a kind of like I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. You know what I mean? I don't know from growing stuff. You know what I mean? I'm about that, helping people. I'm about purpose. I'm about taste and trends and marketing and operations. You know what I mean? So like, I really need to. So when I look at, I like doing what I'm doing with the business. What we're doing, we're building a brand. We're doing good by people. You do good happens. And that the days that the regulations open up, and we're very supportive about that, and we could do a certain microdose milligram strength amount that could be, and that then we're going to go to a company that manufactures the psilocybin that basically has the dose, detailed out, where they could give us and say, this is the dose, and you put this amount into each can, and then we do our mixtures and we do our formulations, and you know what I mean, and a specific amount ends up in each one of the cans, and we can do that, and that's like has a legality to it, and we could do distribution and be in retail locations and sell that for what that is. I'm all about that. I see that 100% happening. Okay.
Awesome.
I totally see that. But I'm not going to go and build the lab, because it's not what I do. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not like my thing. So there's a lot of companies right now that are spending a lot of money and getting big investment dollars to build their facilities, to go and get their FDA approvals on their products, and and they're going to have to go through their regulations of what they got to go and do. But I do think that this is going to be deregulated very fast, way different than marijuana. You see, the difference between the mushrooms and the marijuana is this. My view is that the marijuana went on this trajectory of trying to go recreational, and it kind of got pushed, a lot of pushback kind of thing a little bit. Look, they didn't even federally legalize it yet. Like, what? You got to be kidding me,
Crazy.
man. Like, I don't even know what that's not even go there. So, but the mushrooms, they came into the market and said, look, these mushrooms are really helping people. There is a really noticeable difference, and there's a lot of people that are caught up on a lot of other things, and these mushrooms can really help society. And it came with a different vibe, and it came with a vibe of not just being recreational to smoke weed or recreational to just go and get really like, hallucinogenic out. It came with a vibe of that this can really help, and we want to build these products in controlled fashions that they are correct, that we have done our testing, we have shown the results, and that we could, consistently manufacture, the same dose that, people are going to get, so that somebody doesn't get a 2 or triple type dose and get tripped out or something. So it has to, it has to be correct. You know what I mean? It was not right, where somebody, has something that they do every day or every other day, and it works for them, and then all of a sudden it's not like manufactured right, and it's like it has to be, that consistency has to be there. So I think that that's going to happen, and I think that they're going to get approvals, and I think those approvals are going to go federally, and I think that those approvals, as we're already seeing on a state-by-state basis, federal is like supportive of what the states are doing and giving the states the power to make their decisions, and you're already starting to see that in places like Oregon and other places, really start to develop, right? But like I think that I think it's going to happen fast. I really do. Colorado, other places that are progressive in their ways, but I think it's going to happen way faster. And I think it's going to get federally approved to deregulate, and it's going to be cool. And I think the states are going to adopt them. And, and then as that happens, companies like ours will be able to have line extensions of our product to then, incorporate that in. And I think that's going to be a big thing. And then, I'm sure there'll be, obviously there's going to be capsules, and there'll be different dose amounts, and there'll be different practitioners that will be able to evaluate, how much, milligram strength you should take. And so I think it's going to come along great. I think it's going to be very different energy this coming about because they work, because it really is correct. And by the way, functional mushrooms, functional mushrooms came about. Functional mushrooms are not thousands of years, but in the last 10 years, it started to develop. And in the last 2-3 years, it's developed way more. And people say, why do you think that happened? Why? Because what happened is that, centuries ago, it's been going on. But in the last 30 years ago, there was these pioneers, the Paul Stammeses and so many others. So they started using it and doing it, and then all of a sudden people started to try them. In the last 10 years, they started to be made into, more usable products, Four Sigmatic and others putting it into packets and coffee and stuff like that. And then and it wasn't because there was this big celebrities out there promoting it. It happened because of word of mouth marketing, because people really felt the effects. It happened because I felt the effects. I used it. I shared it with people because I said, look how this is working for me. They tried it. They liked it. They wanted more of it. Look at how it's working for them. So this was a complete viral, cool component of something that that really works. And
Totally.
That's why we ended up where we are today with both functional, and also why I see the movement in psilocybin that is going to wind up being, because look how many people are doing psilocybin today. I mean, I talk to people all the time, all walks of life that do psilocybin. You know what I mean? It's like, it's already accepted in such a way. So I really think that I think there's a good energy around it, and I think it's just correct to come about.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the
I'm happy.
culture shifts. Yeah, the culture shift is amazing, from brands to products to people of note, influential people, celebrities being more open about their use, to conversations like this and podcasts is just spreading awareness. And Scott, I want to thank you, man. I have such a deep appreciation and respect for the mindfulness that you bring to your brand, to your company, to the world. I'm stoked to be rocking with you guys, and I really, really do appreciate you being here and sharing such heartfelt stories and experiences with everybody. So thank you, brother.
Thanks, Brent. I really appreciate it. And I think it's great what you do, because what you do is helping to, really give the education and from an underground kind of like standpoint, you know what I'm saying? Not just because you were watching and sitting around watching CNN and, whatever, they're going to fucking feed us and shit. You know what I mean? I think that I think what's going on here is just incredibly important. You know what I mean? And, we need to share this because there's people in need. And there's things that can really help these people that aren't always like readily available on the shelves of CVS.
Yeah.
So, I think this is really awesome what you do. So thank you very much. And I'm sure our paths will cross again soon.
Absolutely.
And that's it. I hope y'all enjoyed this week's trip. I had a blast talking with Scott. Go check out Odyssey Elixir on Instagram, odysseyelixir.com, to learn more about the brand. I'm starting to rock with them too, so you'll see some more fun content with me and Odyssey coming out soon. BrentPella.com for all the show dates, and I will see y'all next week. Peace.